Two of the world's most powerful men were shouting behind a locked White House door. What neither knew was that a 5-year-old boy was listening. Elon Musk's son had only one question: should we pray for him? The next morning, he vanished. And what he did next left the nation speechless. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The walls of the White House trembled, not from war or weather, but from words. Behind a tall wooden door, Elon Musk and President Donald Trump stood face to face, voices raised, sharp, slicing through the silence like knives. "You think you're the only one who sees the future," Trump barked. "I'm not here to play politics," Elon replied, his voice cold, eyes fierce. "I'm here for something bigger." Just outside the room, a boy no taller than the doorknob stood frozen. XAEA-12, Elon's 5-year-old son, pressed his stuffed shark to his chest, hidden behind a marble column. He wasn't supposed to be there. His nanny had told him to stay near the hallway with his crayons. But when he saw his father walk in with clenched fists and eyes that didn't smile, something inside him moved. That night, back in California, the dinner table was too quiet. Elon barely touched his food, staring into nothing. X swung his legs beneath the table and watched. Then, softly, he whispered, "Daddy, are you mad?" Elon looked up, tired but gentle. "No, buddy, just thinking." X nodded, then added even softer, "Maybe pray for him?" The next morning, the house was silent again. But this time, X was gone. The morning sun had barely risen when the panic began. Elon's house was in chaos. Security guards scoured every hallway, every camera feed. "He's not in his room. Check the garden. Call the driver." Elon's voice cracked as he shouted his son's name again and again, but the house remained painfully silent. X was gone. The Secret Service was alerted. The FAA was contacted. Phones rang endlessly. No one had answers, until one quiet voice on the line, from Washington, whispered the unthinkable. "We found him. He's safe." Hours later, a black SUV pulled up quietly behind the east wing of the White House. Fog hung low over the National Mall. Inside the vehicle sat a 5-year-old boy, legs crossed, holding a crayon drawing in one hand and his stuffed shark in the other. He wasn't crying. He wasn't scared. He was calm, focused. "I need to see Mr. Trump," X told the agent who opened the door. The man blinked, confused. "Why?" he asked gently. "Because my daddy's heart is hurting, and I think Mr. Trump's is too." Inside, they led him to a side room near the Oval Office. He waited there, staring at a large portrait of Abraham Lincoln. X whispered, "You talked about freedom, right?" Then the door opened. President Trump stepped in, his suit slightly wrinkled, his expression unreadable. X stood up slowly, walked toward him, and held out the crayon drawing. Two stick figures holding hands beside a rocket, with the word "peace" written above them. "This is you and my daddy," he said. "You can be friends if you want." President Trump stood still, his eyes meeting the boy's with visible hesitation. For a long second, the room was suspended in awkward silence. Then, softly, X said, "My dad was sad yesterday. Because of you." Trump blinked. He wasn't used to being spoken to like that, especially not by a child. There were no advisors to filter the moment, no teleprompters to frame it. Just a 5-year-old boy holding a worn stuffed shark and speaking from somewhere deeper than politics. "I saw his eyes," X continued. "They were heavy, like he was carrying too many thoughts." Trump opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came. He looked down and saw the crayon drawing now resting in the boy's outstretched hand. Two stick figures with squiggly smiles, one with spiky hair and a red tie, the other with a rocket behind him. Above them, in bright yellow crayon, the word peace was written in shaky, oversized letters. "Says you don't listen," X said quietly. "But I think maybe you forgot how." The president took the drawing slowly. His fingers brushed the paper like it might crumble in his hands. He didn't scoff. He didn't joke. Instead, something in his expression softened. Just slightly, but unmistakably. "You believe in peace, kid?" Trump asked, his voice gentler than usual. "I believe in Jesus," X replied. "He listens even when people yell." There was a moment then, one that no camera captured, no aide recorded. The most powerful man in the world knelt down so he was eye to eye with a boy who saw right through him. And he listened. Just then the door flew open. "Elon," a staffer shouted behind him. Elon Musk burst into the room, breathless, eyes wide with panic. But when he saw the scene in front of him, he stopped cold. There, on the polished floor of a White House side room, stood his son, calm and steady. And before him, kneeling without pride or pretense, was Donald J. Trump, holding a child's drawing like it was the most important document he'd ever received. Elon's mouth opened, but no words came. The weight of the moment fell over him like a wave. He didn't know what had just happened, but he knew everything had changed. Donald Trump looked down at the crayon drawing in his hands, his expression unreadable. The stick figures, the rocket, the oversized word peace. It wasn't the art that struck him. It was who had given it to him, and why. A 5-year-old boy who had snuck past protocol, past politics, past pride. Trump knelt down on one knee almost instinctively and met the child's eyes. His voice for once softened. "Do you think your dad would want to be my friend again?" X tilted his head, still clutching his stuffed shark. "I think you both forgot to be nice. But maybe Jesus can help you remember." The room was quiet enough to hear the ticking of the antique clock on the wall. Trump blinked slowly. He wasn't used to being spoken to like this, especially not by a child. But something about the innocence, the sincerity, cut through the usual defenses he wore like armor. "I used to believe in things like that," Trump murmured. "But this world, it teaches you to fight before you feel." X didn't say anything. He just nodded. And in that silence, something started to shift. Moments later, Elon Musk burst through the doorway, heart pounding. He was ready to scold, to yell, to sweep up his son and demand answers. But what he saw stopped him cold. There was Donald Trump, still kneeling, holding his son's drawing like it mattered, speaking in a voice that no one ever caught on camera. And standing between them was his son, calm, fearless, and impossibly small. Trump slowly stood up, brushing off his suit. "Mr. Musk, I owe you an apology." Elon blinked. "For what?" "Your yesterday." "I was wrong," Trump said. "You were trying to tell me something important, and I let fear talk louder than truth." Elon looked down, the anger fading just a little. "I wasn't trying to win, Donald. I was trying to warn." Trump gave a short nod. It's hard to listen when you're used to being the loudest voice in the room. They stood like that for a moment, uncertain. Then X stepped forward again, reaching up for his father's hand, and then Trump's. "Can we have pancakes now?" Trump let out a breath, half laugh, half sigh. Elon raised an eyebrow. "Pancakes?" he asked. "Pancakes," X said, solemn as a judge. "That's what friends do." Minutes later, the three of them sat around a table in a private White House dining room. Syrup bottles, butter, real conversation. No headlines, no staff. Just three people sharing something simple. Trump poured syrup over a stack and said, "You know, this might be the best meal I've had in a decade." Elon chuckled. "Not exactly a diplomatic summit, huh?" "No," Trump replied, "but maybe more important." They ate mostly in silence at first, but then Trump spoke again. You know what scared me, Elon? Not you, not your ideas. The truth is, I'm afraid the world's moving too fast, and I'm too old to keep up. Elon put his fork down. That's exactly why I spoke up. We can't lead with fear, we have to lead with courage. For them. He nodded at X. Trump looked over at the boy, who was carefully making a syrup smiley face on his pancake. Maybe that kid's got more courage than both of us combined. Elon smiled. Maybe he's what we both needed to remember who we are. The three of them sat there a little longer. Not as titans, not as rivals, just as people. Forgiveness had entered the room, and for the first time in a long time, it stayed. The photo hit the internet like a meteor. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and a 5-year-old boy named X, all seated at a round table with pancakes and syrup, smiling like they weren't two of the most powerful men on earth. No red carpet, no political advisors in the frame, just two former opponents sharing breakfast, and a moment of unexpected peace. News anchors struggled to describe it. Commentators whispered that it had to be a PR stunt or a secret deal or something more calculated. But what none of them saw was what happened after the cameras turned off. That same morning, inside the White House residence, Trump poured a second cup of coffee as Elon sat across from him, still processing the surrealness of the past 24 hours. In the corner of the room, little X sat cross-legged on the carpet, drawing quietly again, this time 3 stick figures under a big blue sky. Trump stared at the coffee before speaking. Maybe it's not about being right anymore, he said, almost to himself. Elon looked up. That's all I ever wanted, Donald. For people to talk, really talk. Trump nodded slowly. You're the future guy. I'm the fighter. We both care about this country, but we forgot how to care about each other. There was a pause. A rare, honest silence. No need to fill it. No one trying to win. I've made enemies out of people I should have tried to understand, Trump continued. And I've made decisions that came more from fear than wisdom. Elon met his eyes. We've all done that. Trump gestured toward X. But that kid, he walked into a room full of pride and softened it. That's something neither of us could have done. Just then, X looked up from his drawing, his eyes wide and innocent. Are we a team now? Both men turned, caught off guard by the simple question. Trump blinked. A team? X nodded. Like friends, who don't always agree, but still help each other. Elon smiled faintly. You've been listening this whole time, huh? Mm-hmm, X said proudly. Teams don't yell, they listen. Trump chuckled under his breath, a real laugh, not the rehearsed kind. Well, if you're asking me, kid, I think we're off to a pretty good start. Elon leaned back in his chair, looking from his son to the man he'd once argued with across a stage. Something had changed, not just in the headlines, not just in the photo, but deep inside. That morning, as the sun rose over Washington, 2 men began something far more lasting than a political truce. They started listening. And somewhere between the clatter of breakfast plates and a boy with a crayon, they remembered what leadership looks like when it's rooted in humility, and maybe, just maybe, the world felt a little less divided that day. The black SUV rolled past the security checkpoint, its tinted windows reflecting the California sunlight. Inside, former President Donald Trump sat still, his face unreadable as they approached a campus that buzzed with invention and ideas. Elon Musk's innovation hub. Rows of engineers, coders, and scientists paused to glance out the windows. Was that really who they thought it was? Trump stepped out, greeted by Elon himself. No press, no podium, just 2 men who had once stood oceans apart, now walking side by side through a corridor lined with prototypes and possibility. Elon gave a quiet tour explaining breakthroughs in AI ethics, carbon capture, and neuroassistive tech. Trump nodded often, asking sharp questions, but without his usual bravado, He was listening. In the back of the room, little X watched them from his favorite red beanbag chair, a stuffed shark under one arm, a crayon in the other. As Trump walked past, the boy stood and tugged at his jacket. Trump turned. "Yes, sir?" "You changed my dad," X said, plainly. "Thank you." Trump blinked hard. "No, you changed me." Later that evening, the three of them sat in Elon's office, lit softly by sunset. A conversation unfolded, not about politics or technology, but about legacy, children, forgiveness. Then came the unexpected suggestion. "We should say something," Trump said. "Together, not as rivals, but as fathers." Elon raised an eyebrow. "You mean a joint address?" Trump nodded. "Not to make headlines, just to speak truth." 2 days later, the impossible was announced, a televised national address from the White House. Trump and Musk. Together. No one knew what to expect. Conspiracy theories ran wild. Cable news hosts speculated about backroom deals. Commentators clashed. But what unfolded wasn't politics, it was personal. The curtains parted. Trump walked to the podium first. His voice, usually charged with force, was unusually steady. "Tonight I speak not as a former president, but as a man who was reminded by a child what really matters. I forgot what it meant to listen with my heart." He paused, then turned toward Elon and stepped aside. Elon followed. "I've stood on rocket platforms and launch towers, but nothing prepared me for the launch of forgiveness, of humility. That journey didn't begin in a boardroom. It started in my son's heart." The room was silent. Tension hovered. And then, without a word from anyone, X walked onto the stage in his tiny suit. Cameras flashed. Gasps swept the room. But X didn't flinch. He walked right between them, took each man's hand, and raised them high above his head. It wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't scripted, but it said everything. A boy, 2 men, and a single moment that cracked something wide open in a fractured nation. There were no slogans, no winners, no spin, only a silent agreement that somehow the future could look different. And across the country, in living rooms and airports, at kitchen tables and hospital beds, people watched. And for the first time in a long time, they believed. The photo didn't look like news. It wasn't taken on a press stage. There were no flags waving in the background, no suits, no microphones. Just 3 people outside a small ice cream shop in Washington, D.C. A boy in a rumpled little blazer, 1 billionaire in jeans, and 1 former president wearing sneakers for the first time in public memory. Each held a cone, the flavors already dripping under the soft warmth of spring sunlight. And somehow, that single image said more than 100 speeches ever could. In the days that followed, the photo went viral, not because of shock value, but because of its softness. Talk show hosts who were used to sparring paused. Morning anchors blinked twice at the screen before speaking. Late-night comedians made jokes, but gentler ones. And across the country, something subtle started to happen. People softened. Teachers shared the story with their classrooms. Pastors quoted X crayon note in Sunday sermons. In a school in Kansas, a little girl wrote a letter to the White House in crayon. "If a 5-year-old can make peace, maybe I can help my parents be nice again." Thousands of others followed. Children's drawings of rockets, hand-holding stick figures, and the word peace, scrawled in different sizes from different homes. At home, Elon was quieter, but not withdrawn. He started putting his phone away at dinner. He asked X questions instead of answering them. He listened more. One night, he even told X a bedtime story, not from a book, but from his childhood, about how he used to dream of rockets, not headlines, stars, not stock prices. "You used to be little too?" X asked. Elon smiled. "Still am, in some ways." Trump changed too. He still thundered in meetings, still disagreed loudly, but the edges were different, softer. He paused more often, asked for second opinions. Sometimes, in the middle of a heated debate, he'd glance across the room at his desk, where in a sleek gold frame rested X's crayon drawing. 2 stick figures and a rocket. The flag above them said only one word: peace. It wasn't policy that had changed. It was posture. These 2 men hadn't traded values or careers. They hadn't magically agreed on everything. But somewhere beneath the noise of their worlds, they had remembered something they'd both forgotten: how to listen, how to forgive, how to start again. One night, riding in the back of a limo, Elon and X sat side by side. City lights shimmered on the windows as they pulled away from another long day of meetings. Elon wasn't scrolling. He wasn't lost in thought. He was just there, next to his son, one arm wrapped around him, the other resting quietly. "Daddy," X whispered. "Yeah, buddy. Did we fix the world?" Elon looked at him, long and steady. "Not yet, but you opened something big." In the front seat, the driver blinked back a tear. At the White House, Trump stood alone in the Oval Office. The crowd was gone. The cameras were off. But the quiet held a different kind of weight. He opened a drawer and pulled out the drawing. He held it gently, staring at it. Not like a politician, but like a grandfather looking at something holy. Later, he would send Elon a short message, just one line: "Tell X I kept the picture." Still thinking about what he said. Back in the limo, Elon read the message aloud. X looked up and grinned. Maybe he's learning. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the Capitol, a boy with a crayon had reminded 2 titans, and the nation, that real change doesn't start with power. It starts with a heart. It starts with a whisper. It starts with a boy and a crayon. When was the last time you listened, not with your ears, but with your heart? It's a question we don't ask often enough. In a world filled with headlines and shouting, we've grown used to tuning each other out. But what if healing doesn't begin in politics, boardrooms, or protests? What if it begins with humility? What if the path back to each other starts with the quietest voice in the room? A 5-year-old boy didn't come with a policy plan or a press release. He came with a crayon, a drawing, a word: peace. And somehow that soft offering melted the walls between 2 of the most powerful men in the world. Maybe the world doesn't need louder voices. Maybe it needs braver hearts. Maybe it needs yours. If this story touched something in you, something tired, something hopeful, something you thought the world had forgotten, then don't walk away the same. Let it change you. Let it challenge you to reach out, to forgive, to listen just a little deeper. Because if a child can remind us that even the most divided hearts can find their way back, so can we. Reflect on where you've been holding on to anger. Reconnect with someone you've written off. And believe, truly believe, that reconciliation is possible. If you're ready for more stories like this, stories that speak to the soul, restore your hope in humanity, and make you believe in change again, then subscribe. Stay with us. Let's walk this journey together. Because sometimes the smallest voice can break the loudest silence.